in the elevator.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, considering we're supposed to start at 1:30, I am going to call this meeting to order. This is the House Bill 4123 Homeless Advisory Board meeting. The first thing on our agenda is roll call. Commissioner Sweet, if you would like to start.
John Sweet, representing the county Coos.
David Keels, also representing Coos County.
Andrew Brainer, Director of Homeless Response.
Nicole Rutherford, City of Coos Bay.
David Miller, City of North Bend.
Okay. And then
Our staff, go ahead.
Ashley Horrick, Homeless Response Office.
Eric Shermer, Homeless Response Office.
all right.
Brown, citizen.
Anthony Brown, citizen. Dave Kaufman, Major, Salvation Army.
Okay, great, thank you. So then that brings us to item number 2, which is public comments. And I believe we had a public comment that was written and provided to the board. Know if that individual is.
You want to do roll call for manager?
Oh, sure, sorry. Who we have online?
So we have Kathy first, if I can read that right.
I'm Kathy Salyers. I'm a community volunteer. I'm a retired registered nurse.
Welcome.
I'm Christine Duell, Program Director at ADAPT. And I'll call out Jean.
Hi, I'm Jean Nichols. I'm the Program Director at ADAPT with Fresh Start. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Welcome. And then to the left of Joshua, I can't.
Might be Lily.
Lily.
Yeah, it's Lillian, and I'm a homeless outreach peer over here at ADAPT.
Mr. Sowers.
Yeah, I'm Joshua Sowers, CRM2 out at ADAPT, and I do homeless outreach.
Miss Laura.
And Counselor Farmer.
Laura's having mic issues.
And Counselor Farmer, you there?
Yep, I'm doing some work out in the community, so I'm called in.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming virtually at least. So.
Yep.
All right. So public comments. If anybody has a comment to add, we did receive the one written comment from Steve Skinner, so that'll be added to the record. But happy to take any other. Yeah.
I was curious. I was at a commissioner meeting, and I think it was Coos Health and Wellness. I'm not real sure, but they give. They were looking for funding for these pallet houses for like $1,800 a month or something like that for one unit. And I was wondering how can that be justified for. I don't know if I want to. You all want me to speak to that? It's a little outside of our meeting, but
yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, it's not really our business as an entity.
Right. Yeah, that's more of a county. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm happy to address that with you after the meeting. Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Anybody online? So that will move us to item number 3, which is the director's report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, board. Our office has been very busy this last month, as everybody has known. Since our last meeting, the team was able to attend the homeless memorial put on by the human rights advocates of Coos County. This event was held on December 21st at the Coos Bay Library. The event was well attended, seeing approximately 100+ participants and volunteers in attendance. Our team was able to lend a hand to help out participants and make connections with the group, passing on information about this year's pig count. The team was able to go out to Charleston, Lakeside, Coquille, and Bandon events with ADAPT. and Bay Area First Step, Coos Health and Wellness, and HIV Alliance. These events have been very impactful and have provided our staff with a lot of insight into what this population experiences and the different ways that our partners are engaging. Monthly stakeholder meetings are beginning to see increased participation now. And we've had a record number of attendance at our most recent primary care meeting, seeing 17 participants in attendance. Establishing new connections with Bay Area Hospital and then North Bend VA Clinic as well during this time. A survey was sent out to each of the community stakeholder groups to solicit opposite opinions on the effectiveness of our monthly meetings and to identify areas where we are doing well and areas we can improve on. The survey has seen about 19 responses back. A reminder email has been sent out to more participants. We will share the results during our next board meeting. Point time count volunteer signups have been live since December 15th. As of today, we are looking for approximately 20 individuals for both static and brush count locations, especially because our social media and engagement is trending upward. We are using the momentum to communicate on our volunteer and incentive item sourcing goals. Additionally, we have been able to present at the chamber lunches to talk to volunteers and to introduce people with our PIT program, to introduce our incentives wish list for the year rounding PIT count supplies, including today. That's my report for today.
Great, thank you. Without any questions there, we'll move on to item number 4, which is an update on some of the projects that have been ongoing. And the first one is Major Kaufman perhaps wants to give us an update for Salvation Army's Hope Village.
Perfect. Andrew asked me to present specifically around encumbrances and funding, because I guess those are the major issues that my leadership is experiencing. Tension, that's the word I'll use, tension, right? The challenge for me is negated. I've seen proof that this community rises up to challenges, and I've seen not only resources but finances come forward in ways that I've never seen in other communities, in large communities. So that share, I've said that to my leadership several times, and I've made it a point that they really don't want to overlook this, and I've assured them that any financial challenges would be met. And I'm maybe stepping out on faith.
Please come a little closer if you'd like.
I was just bringing you guys, you've seen this before. This is a little different, a little updated. I kind of put it all on one page. Sorry, I get it too. This is the finances for the construction project, and then the operations funding for the year. I have 2 extras. Sorry, I can share. I'll share with that in a second. Sorry. Okay, thank you. At the end of the day, look at the bottom number. It says operating costs. This is the concern that the Salvation Army has. Thank you to Coos County Commissioners for taking the largest encumbrance off the table, which was the 10-year encumbrance on properties. Because of their investment, $480,000, we don't have to have a 10-year encumbrance. However, there are still some encumbrances left. For instance, the construction excavation costs, anything involving permits and all those things that we would use the funds for. I apologize, I've neglected to share where the funds are coming from. Potentially, we have an inroad with Coquel Indian Housing Authority through funds from OHCS for $1.25 million. Those are the funds I'm referencing here, okay? So we would be utilizing those funds to help with the excavation, the infrastructure, anything we need as far as gas, electric, water, all those things, permits, anything to do with inspections, all that stuff would be used. Those encumbrances are about 3 years. So I've whittled my leadership down to about 3 years we're going to be investing in this thing. But I did share with them, if we do get to use the Coquel Indian Housing Authority funding, we're funded through 2026, June 2026, which would mean we have June 2027, which would be encumbered, and we would have to raise $381,000. They seemed relieved at that, but again, there's still tension. There's still some tension there, and I think it has to do with the fact that there's a lot that goes on in the Army. It's a big organization, broad umbrella. They're concerned with leadership changes. That's a regular part of the Salvation Army. I'm here for now, and I could be gone as early as June. I've told them I don't want to leave until this project is seen through, so please leave me alone if that's possible. They say yes, but that doesn't, they're paramilitary, that doesn't mean anything. Yes is for now. Sharing that with you, that's a concern for the Salvation Army because they don't know who they would send here next. We are independent for all intents and purposes. I'm a free thinker. I get to think the way I think. I could be replaced by someone who doesn't necessarily think like me. That's playing into the picture. All of this paints a picture for the Salvation Army that they want to make a decision that's best for the Salvation Army Coos Bay and best for the Salvation Army, I'm sorry, the Coos Bay community. $380,000 is the big one. I've got to essentially secure funding for $380,000 for 1 year. And then after that, I think the discussions could center around other options for the transitional housing. I would, if I'm here and I'm allowed to make decisions about this, I would say that it remains transitional, that maybe the program changes a little bit to where it's not drawing on employee resources so much to operate. And there's ways that we could do that through partnerships. I have a great relationship with Coos Health and Wellness. I have great relationships with Adapt and Bear, the first step. There's a lot of people that I could mention a long list of people, but anyway, I really think there's ways we can solve this to bring down operating costs. I spoke quickly, covered a lot of territory. Is there any other questions around the project?
Let me just make sure I understand. So you're saying that you have significant funding, but the operational costs for that last year is still a bit of a bone of contention that the Army might be still concerned that puts them on the hook potentially for that cost without a guaranteed funding for that last section. Is that, do I understand that correctly?
Correct.
And you're also suggesting then that some of the areas, I assume the personnel cost is the largest section of the operational costs, right? That could be spread out with current partners that might reduce that and allow that to be spread out so that the current funding can more completely cover the operations, or are you just thinking after that period, that would be a more sustainable model for funding?
I was thinking after that period.
Okay.
Yeah, the way that I read the OHCS documents, whatever program we pitch is funded has to remain just exactly the way it is through the encumbrance period. And after that, we can make changes. Okay. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if I'm reading it right. That's kind of the way I see it.
That's how I have read those in the past. It's the same. Yes, this is, you will do the way that you said initially during this period of time. After that, then you can do something different. But yeah, okay.
And the shortest encumbrance is 3 years, and that's for things like remodeling.
Yeah.
Oh, there is one curveball that might come on. Once we start the land use permit process, it might bring, correct me if I'm wrong, traffic impact studies. And they also might they might need to look at our property as far as parking goes. And we might have to have a parking lot. That's a 10-year encumbrance because that's new construction. So that would be a whole new curve to the property. And I can't even get to that until I start probably the upfront cost of, I ballpark it around 15,000 to 20,000 to get the plans drawn up to start to pull the permits, get everybody in place to start the research process.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. It's kind of hard to hear what you guys are talking about a little bit, even with the captions on. I'm curious, where is this property and what is it for? that we're talking about the construction on?
Sure. So the Salvation Army has made a proposal to the county essentially as the fiscal agents for this pilot project that we have. They are what's your address?
1155 East Flanagan Avenue, Coos Bay.
I would say if they Google it, there's news reports, TV reports. It's been heavily covered in the news media.
And it's essentially going to add some temporary shelters, modular type homes. They're very small, 8 on their current site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was 155 Flanagan.
1155 East Flanagan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, it looks like we're going in and out of power over here, so I don't know how long it's gonna stay on. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
So, Major Kaufman, is there something that at this point that we can do that's helpful, or is this more of an internal sort of decision that is between you and your group to try to figure out?
Well, any assurances and in writing, any assurances would go a long way. You know, my opinion is kind of like earnest money on a house, right? You're putting it forward. We're going to do this deal, but if something happens, we're okay to back out. So that would be kind of the way I would think that we on this end could work something out that would make it feasible for Salvation Army. That's not far away.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for presenting. There's no other questions. We can move to the next.
Actually, I have one.
Yeah.
Major, just in case, you know, I personally, I don't want to see this ever happen and you go away because you've been a huge asset to our county. But with the current board on projects, do they have a say if they ever have a new director that comes in that to foresee these projects to go through?
The Army systems do ensure that, yes. It would take assertiveness, but your board currently has the ear of people at Long Beach, our territorial headquarters. So you have more sway than most. And I would say that based on the personalities of the people that I've met here, yes, you have a, what would I say? Put it in 85%. Your board has sway for that.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. All right, so that brings us to item B, which is an update on the North Bend City Coos Housing Authority.
So we asked for an update from Matthew Borderthroft, and he can't be here right now. He's meeting with the mayor. He will come next month and give a much more detailed slide deck, et cetera, presentation about the whole project. But he sent along some information that I can share. And that is they're preparing for their 3rd round of funding application. And if you don't know, the funding applications are scored on a point system, and they missed their last round by 6 points. So this next list of things are all things they've done to score a little higher on this 3rd round of application. They are now permit ready. They have retooled their MOUs. They have had a local group go through permanent supportive housing training.
Eric, if you will, for the benefit of it helped to let them know that we're talking about the Banger School project.
Oh, sorry.
So that everybody knows what project this is.
Yes, it's hopefully going in where the old Banger School is, and will be somewhere between 140 and 176 units. The local PSH, permanent supportive housing training, is allowing them to score higher on their funding application. It also qualifies them for a new funding source. So that is getting thrown into the mix. In the first quarter of 2024, the state of Oregon will release its first round of funding for notice of funding availability, and they will do the application process. They expect that to happen in March. They will apply for both LIFT funding, which is tax credit based, and permanent supportive housing funding to build the units. They are investing in greater community involvement using South Coast Equity Coalition and having meetings with a large group of organizations to get feedback for the project at the Bangor School site. And they are integrating that feedback into the plan for the site. They have cleared almost all environmental hurdles from HUD. I think there's one little piece left, and Matthew can tell us more about that next month. And they will also be offering a new type of voucher, which is a project-based voucher that allows people to use tax credits to build units. And that's what I have for Matthew.
Great, thank you.
It's likely that normally the funding cycle we will hear in July. I think that's usually typically the response time. So hopefully third time is a charm.
Yeah. And the way time goes, that's like about 17 hours from now, we'll have a response. All right, well, item 5, board comments. Commissioner Sweet, do you have any?
I have nothing.
You have nothing, okay.
To add.
To add, yeah.
I don't know if I have a whole lot. I was kind of reading Mr. Skinner's public comments. His basic thing was, it looks like the homeless presence in North Bend is greater than other communities. And I kind of laughed a little bit because I think it's depending on your perspective. Living in Coos Bay, I always think it's Coos Bay. So I think maybe everybody gets skewed in terms of what's in front of them regularly. But more truthfully, it's probably across the board in all communities, somewhat proportional to our geographic size. So, we're still trying to find solutions, at least within my organization. We've served folks that have mental health conditions, and the homeless, the number of percentage of people that are homeless within that population is significantly higher overall. And so we have been trying to find some other solutions. A lot of our work that we do is trying to provide housing and shelter, but it never seems to be completely sufficient. And we end up paying a premium for what's available as well, which doesn't really serve the overall community because all of us end up driving up our housing prices together as well. So that's why I'm really anxious that some of these things like Bangor start to happen to create some pressure valve on our housing system, because even on an employment end, when I hire a new employee, the difficulty they have in locating housing here is tremendous. In fact, I had one today, and the first thing out of her mouth was, I was looking to see where I could live there. What is it like? And they have to tell her what her average housing prices are and what she's likely to go through to try to find a place. It's hard for me to get the words out when I have to tell somebody about that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think, increasing that supply changes that supply and demand, which is that equation for cost. So
yes,
yeah,
very clear economic thing at work here, supply and demand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful because I learned that in college. Like, I'm hoping that was legitimate learning, that supply and demand, otherwise.
It's like the law of gravity.
Hopeful.
Very personal. We've done that and I have something.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. Mine's not worth what those two are going to say.
Okay.
Really quick, before we move on to something else, how many units were we talking about for the Bangor School project?
Somewhere between 140 and 176.
Okay, I thought it was a pretty high number, but I wanted to be clear. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Councilor, do you have any?
I'm missing a number in my head, so I was going to bug David about it. How many clients do we have in the mental health system right now for the county, roughly? Because I know that number fluctuates daily.
Well, I mean, on average, we serve about 1,500 people at any given time. But for the folks that are, a lot of our people that are more impacted by mental illness, those with more severe mental illness, we serve about 250 to 300 of those individuals. And that's the group that probably has proportionally higher levels of homelessness than our general group that we serve.
I just wanted to keep that number in my head because a bunch of meetings I've been in lately for largely political reasons, folks have talked about what happened if we didn't have Coos Health and Wellness. So I think it's an important thing that folks keep in their mind, that the implication is also 1,500 mentally ill individuals not receiving service.
Oh, yeah. We operate probably about 60 to 70 units of housing ourselves, either directly or through some kind of contractor.
Yeah, so, I remember Columbia Care's a big one.
Yeah, and that's really been the only way that we've been able to have any success, is to sort of either own or manage our own housing, because typically private landlords, our folks are low on the list. If there's a way to knock those folks off, the like, you know, poor rental history or not great income, and trying to come up with you know, $3,000–4,000 upfront money is not easy either.
No, that's all I wanted to make sure I had numbers in my head for.
Couple housekeeping things. The short session will go. Obviously, one of the big impetuses is housing. They also anticipate trying to Measure 110. Another full court press is recreational immunity, but it doesn't look like it will swing, but we'll see. The reason I bring up the housing side is there will be the next round of funding. We now are required to report numbers quarterly of progress. And it was asked to me at the state level whether or not we were filing or not, because we're not showing any progress and we're sitting on a bunch of money. And we recognize that 2 other entities with that second tranche of money that we got from the emergency order actually had withdrawal back. And so I defended that. And so they want to see some progress, especially if we're going to try to go after another tranche. And so I certainly laid out everything that we are doing, but that second tranche and the reporting are tied to numbers, and they want to see progress. And so we might want to think about recirculating back on a couple of the shovel-ready projects that are in way and trying to find a way to help them and show some numbers.
Their argument is we're not showing rehousing numbers.
Yes.
So good. Yeah, I like your approach. A counterpunch that if you funded our developments, we might be able to rehouse people.
Exactly. So we have a lot of ask in the pipeline right now from the cities. There's a number of different bills moving forward and a lot of different asks. At lunch, I was thanked for helping AYA. Fortunately, I had COVID and I don't recall exactly what I did for them. And I was honest with them. He said whatever I did was whiz bang and was great. He loved it. And I'm like, I don't recall what I did. I remember being at the kitchen table on a very tight deadline, and the state said something like, just get us the best that you can. And I think I might have sent it to you all. I don't recall. I don't know. But it was for some funding or money. So I knew AYA had some stuff out there. So I think I reached out to them. I must have. I'd have to go back and actually find out what I did. I will tell you, I got COVID for Christmas and the flu for New Year's. The flu was worse than COVID. I don't envy anyone that gets either, because it wipes you out more than anything. But circling back, we have a timetable on the $500,000. And we're in the same boat of the 5-year sustainability. And so we've got to wrap up that timetable and we'll be obligated to report back to the state. And so that's why I suggest Depending on where things are, we've got to show some progress. Even in the sense of this, until something actually happens, it's still sitting in the bank, and they see that on the reporting, and so they're asking questions. So we might want to circle back and start talking or thinking or getting staff to tell us where they are or where we can help to show some progress and some numbers. So I know there's the project in Coos Bay, but the TikTok means that, you know, we won't be able to go after another trans. On the CDBG side, there are potentially some leftover funds out there that can be had for some project. I met with them, with the team yesterday. I think yesterday. Sorry, I'm still a little foggy because of but I think we all met at the city hall yesterday with them, because we still have our 2020 CDBG open, which was the utility rent. I'm trying to get that clear. And so we're going to do an intergovernmental agreement with potentially sister city in Douglas County to close that out, because they've exhausted all efforts and can't find enough need to spend the rest of the money here in Coos County. And so, and they've been trying now for a year, which is unfortunate, but I think that so much has gotten off the books. So we've got to close that out, because our city will be going after CDBG. I suspect you all will be too. We don't want anything still on the books when we go after our next opportunity. Ours is going to be for our community building that needs about 2.5 million, and that's also our emergency evacuation and emergency center. And so it's fallen apart. There's just no money. I would go to the county, but when I asked them for money, they said they'll give me 2.5 million as long as I give them 10 million. Our overhead's really high. And yeah, there's just no money. That's the reality. We're all suffering from the same thing. I think that as much as I love the kettle campaign, we might end up all being out there on the corners year round.
Competition.
That's all yours. I'll give it to them. But that's from my perspective of what I'm hearing at the state level. They're going to ramp up some of the additional meetings. In fact, they at some point looks like they want us all to get together in Bend, that is where if you do not have progress, I'd suggest that we not show. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
So kind of on that thread, take that ball. I did reach out to not Eric, but Tara, and connected her to work with Eric to put together the proposal, which you recommended should be done in order to give that documentation for that funding request. It's my understanding that's in the works, and with the goal by end of week to have that. I don't know what that looks like on your guys' schedule, because it needs to obviously probably get on your agenda for approval of some sorts. Council, but
I'm trying to remember what you're talking about.
Well, I think in our numbers, like 1.5 for Deborah.
Yeah.
And then there's a portion that's going to be related to the actual units on that site. I can send you back your napkin math scribbles if that's helpful, but
I remember doing that. We were
in a meeting.
Jail.
Yeah, so I think we're really close to having something, you know, to get that, so then we have ownership because that's what's holding us back from that CDBG application.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
What you're saying, David, is that that's gonna put some pressure on us.
Yes.
Because we're gonna have to show these numbers to get any more funding. And that means some projects that are not ready enough, we're gonna have to let them out.
Yeah.
And then figure out the ones that can.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get to the point where we have a solid plan for 4128. Now we're gonna close out the 2-year.
Yeah.
Because all that money has to be spent. And then have a 5-year plan for sustaining. And then under the quarterly reporting of the EO 2023 money -2, consistently, what are we doing? And so they like plans, but right now they want action. And the governor's office wants action. She went to bat for us, and that's being made clear to me during the meetings. So they and I said as much. We knew that things had changed around. There was a full court press by the team, and it paid off.
Right.
Because she visited quite a few places in the county, and it paid off. So they want to see progress. And in a lot of the meetings, we were consistently ahead of everybody else. So we don't want to fall behind now. We want to stay in the forefront on the radar so that we can have more money rain down on us to address some of these issues.
And do you remember, I can't remember the exact numbers that we're supposed to be, of how many in each category. Do you have that?
832.
832.
Yeah, so it's 8.
We're accomplishing 8.
And then the 32, if this project can go, the cycle of the CDBG is going to be the questionable whether or not money can rain fast enough to, state loves us, but they've seen some of the other counties. Now, the 2 counties, obviously had the resources to do something, but what giveth, she quickly took it away and redispersed. And I'm like, could have dispersed down here,
Yeah.
I didn't say that, by the way, but I was thinking it. But it happened without any of our knowledge. It just happened quickly, but it was that at her discretion. It wasn't the balance of state money. And so we weren't really entitled, although I always feel entitled. So.
Let me ask a question to Major.
Yeah.
Major, how close are we to signing the dotted line of the project? If you could.
The process right now sits at Portland. They've got the proposal. I had all the questions come to me from Long Beach. I answered them to the best of my ability, utilizing our entire team. They said the answers were satisfactory. It's sitting there. There's a meeting. It's called Projects Committee, and they meet in Long Beach. So it's going to be presented to them. That's the people that will give me permission to say, go for it. Next steps would be funding. We're working with a consultant through CHA and OHCS to work out the details on the funding. That will be the next piece in the puzzle. I'm hopeful that this is all going to happen before February 1st.
Okay.
I'm hopeful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sweet, did you still have?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
First is, thanks, David, for sitting down there. I'm sorry for the rest of you.
That's where my name is. Yeah. I've been helping John. So good.
How's your health? I was recently asked to serve as the chairperson of the Association of, what they call it, Forest Trust Land Counties. And I'll get it. It's not a big deal, but there are 600,000 acres of these forest lands in this state, largely up in the northwest corner of the state, but we have over 7,000 acres of them here. And these were lands that were privately owned in the late 30s and early 1940s. I'll get to it after a while here, you'll see the connection. And the people who owned them in those years, if they had harvested or if their forest was burned, they were talking about 100-year rotations. And so unless you were very, very wealthy and had a lot of land and could have constant flow of revenue coming in from enough, have an ongoing flow of revenue, typically people would just let it go back for taxes, because certainly they weren't going to live to see another harvest, and chances are their children wouldn't see. So you'd have to be pretty fond of your grandchildren to hang on and pay taxes for a century before you harvested the timber. And so they didn't pay taxes. Counties got them bad. They didn't have any money, just coming out of the Depression. We still don't have any money. We're not exactly coming out of a depression. Okay. But the state floated some bonds and came up with a great program to buy these lands from the county for $1 per acre. And then they would replant them and manage them. And when they harvested them, they would keep roughly 1/3 of the harvest proceeds. And the other 2/3 of the harvest proceeds they would share with the counties, who would distribute them much the same way that property taxes are distributed. Each taxing district has its own tax rate, and so they would get a percentage of those that was similar to their tax rate as compared to the whole percentage of the whole. Over the years, for really many instances, good reasons, management emphasis changed away from harvest to other things such as environmental purposes and recreation, carbon sequestration, all those things. And there's been constant pressure for quite some years now to not harvest your forest. And this that type of pressure can be pretty effectively used against publicly owned forests. So here's what's happened at those lands recently. Despite the fact that our governor has said first priority will be housing and housing affordability, there's a plan afoot, a new management plan that will shut down 55% of those 600,000 acres from harvest. The minimum reduction in harvest will be 70 million board feet of logs per year. Those logs, when converted, that's every year. And that means there's already one sawmill that's shut down because of this, partly because of this. The market's bad right now. And they don't see any hope for the future, given the fact that there's going to be 70 million board feet less logs, most of them from the area in which this mill is located. So the mill shut down, but 70 million feet of logs, it's hard to understand, but you get a lot more lumber than 1 million feet out of 70 million feet of logs. In fact, you can get over 200 million board feet of lumber out of 70 million feet of log, just because our mills have become so much more efficient in converting logs to lumber. That is enough lumber to build each year 14,000 starter homes, not great big homes, but homes that people who are trying to buy their first home would be building. The governor's goal is for housing starts is to add 30,000 housing starts a year for the next several years in this state. That same government just took away wood for half of those homes. And what happens when you reduce the supply of anything? The demand stays the same, supply is reduced, so the people with money pay more, prices go up. It just doesn't, all this stuff doesn't make sense. And certainly the people who lose their jobs, they're probably lucky to be able to afford to pay for the house they own, they live in. And let alone, and for the people who are waiting to buy a home, they put that dream off until they move someplace else. And you couple that with some of our land use requirements. And if you have a really, like down south of Bandon, there's a big, relatively flat area there, generally covered with gorse. And if you walk out in it in the winter, it's just depressions on it. The land doesn't drain very well. There are very few streams that come through it. You get rain like this, stays in that pond. What grows? A tussock or something like that. That's an indicator species for wetlands. So kind of time to go build your house. And again, here in rural Oregon, we build onesies, twosies. In urban Oregon, you build housing developments, 100, 100, 200 housing, you hire an attorney and staff to do all the permitting, and that's their job. Down here, it's the guy's working and the wife are working 5 days a week, and they're supposed to have time to go fill out a permit and fight with DEQ over tussocks and find some other piece of land that they can buy and say, we'll use this for wetland to replace the tussocks that we're going to build our home over the top of. See, and I just want you to know that what we're doing is really good work. We're trying to help the people who don't have homes, but we're not addressing the underlying cause. And until we get to the underlying cause, we're just going to be constantly supporting housing and other things that our residents don't have the jobs, because a lot of our natural resources jobs are gone and they don't have the money. And so we're throwing money at a problem. It's really important that we help everyone out. But at the same time, we also need to be pushing back. And I think, generally speaking, those of us who are kind of socially minded are not always very economically minded. And what you're seeing happen is depriving people of affordable lumber and affordable land. And all this good work we're doing is very much frustrated by those actions, as clearly I am. So that's my bitch for today.
Some tack on that slightly too. We missed the Bangor project by about 6 points. Do you know to what extent that related to the economy of scale score? Because that is a component that regularly bites us relative to Metro, because they're always going to be able to achieve a better economy of scale. So adding on to that, when the price goes up, it doesn't mean much to them. It harms us more so. And we can rely on waiting for them to change their metric, which doesn't seem to have happened substantially. Or a less manageable alternative is how to make it more expensive for there to do business and to encourage forestry companies to sell locally so that it's not as cost effective for Metro to do business. Just a thought.
They do sell.
How to make it happen more and make it more expensive for Metro. How to looking at a way to make it or encourage companies to charge Metro more, was basically what I was saying. If we can make it less cost effective for Metro to do business, we come up higher on the scores to get our projects funded. It's not easy.
I don't want to start that war. We're on the losing end of that one.
Yeah. We were very competitive on the DCM. There were very specific things that the state gave us feedback. Obviously there was an appeal on the second go round, and then consult after that. Almost every project went to an area that was a victim of the forest fires. And so you could see that there was an impetus to get housing going in areas that were completely decimated.
That makes sense.
And so when you're going up against that type of preference points, it's hard to
that's a reasonable one.
Exactly, come out in the system.
Yeah.
And so Matt with the team has really retooled, reconfigured, reinvigorated, and really brought the community partners together on this round. And I think it's very positioned very well to move this project forward. You know, most folks don't realize that we haven't had any new housing even in North Bend since 1960, let alone any new senior housing. You know, we're almost out of available land and usable, buildable land. I can get you, you know, wetland mitigation all day long. In fact, if you just came in, I had to divert coming in here because of the accident up on Tremont and Newmark. But if as you came in around the waterfall clinic, the word waterfall right now is an understatement. In fact, the picture that I saw here, here is their dental clinic parking sign.
Jesus.
That whole area, it's all underwater. That whole, you know, it's we're getting inundated.
Good thing they're already developed. Wetland is not an issue.
Yeah, the place where the old hot place was, that whole parking lot's, you know, they're underwater.
We didn't used to be called Marshfield for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so it's catching up to us. So the bay, whoo, boy, you see all that stuff coming in the bay from the storms. And so yeah, so it's you know, we weather these things. All right, good topics, John. You're right on point. Without a question on some of this, because it is true. And you always wonder where the right hand and the left hand. I think we wonder sometimes, like, you know, it is cheaper on the front end to actually address issues, but yet it's more expensive for us on the back end trying to chase our tails to address the homeless. And so we see this in government. I learned almost 10 years ago, it was the most eye-opening experience, that, you know, folks that are on subsidies, the government system actually is designed not to get you off. It allows you to sustain. And when you sit down and understand the model that, you know, someone that's getting subsidies who actually wants to get an education, wants to do better, has to go and tell her employer, I can't accept that 50-cent raise, because if so, I'll lose all my subsidies, as opposed to trying to slowly, you know, wean you off. And so when you start to see some of these models and understand how they work, you know, it's no different than the question that begs on, you know, where's the common sense on some of the timber and what's the rationale and thinking behind it? And is the right hand talking to the left hand?
The loss of healthcare was usually the biggest fear we saw out of clients, at least in the mental health system. Through David can speak to it as well, as when we would be trying to get somebody a job in the mental health side, their first concern was, will I lose OHP?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
I have a question, Commissioner Sweet. In regard to the forest, I thought there was some stipulation, and I'm new here, so I don't know how it all works. If a forest gets 100 years old, now that's an ancient forest, then it can never be harvested. Is that correct?
There's a lot of pressure on that, and I think the push starts at about age 80.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I have an education in forestry, so I know a little bit about it. Not enough. I don't know that there's anything really sacred about a 100-year-old tree. If you can't harvest it, pretty soon it becomes a 200-year-old tree. And when they get around about 120 years of age around here, the forest becomes, they call carbon neutral. It's as much wood is rotting, which puts carbon dioxide in the air, as there is as much wood is rotting as there would growing that's taking carbon dioxide out of the air and converting it to carbon. And eventually that tree dies totally. So you know, its lower limbs die, grabs up the tree next to it, all that rots away. Pretty soon inside the tree starts to die. I remember I worked for Weyerhaeuser when they were harvesting their old growth timber here. And some logs were really, really sound, but a lot of them were rotten on the inside. Almost to all they had was a shell around the outside about that wide all around the tree, and a tree that big around. Now that's an exaggeration. To get much more than that, they fall down. And Weyerhaeuser cut those all down because they were actually losing volume every year. It was rotting away. They cut it and replaced it. But yeah, I think we hold big trees and old trees as being somewhat sacred. And I don't know that they, I mean, it's nice to have them. An old growth forest is beautiful. But I don't know beyond that there's any good purpose they serve. And that's good purpose. Yeah, there's some animals like.
Oh yeah.
But you know, if you have an old growth forest, the browsers and the songbirds and the pollinators, they don't have much to do in old growth forest. So you have those at the risk of having these animals that we kind of think are warm and fuzzy in exchange for animals like bulls and slugs, things like that. That we're not real fond of petting.
Thank you for inviting me to the meeting, everybody. Unfortunately, I have to pop off here, but I'm looking forward to joining you guys next month as well. So have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that draws us to the end anyways.
Should have did it a little while ago before I got here. Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, so that being said, we will adjourn. Thank you for coming
Thank you,
today.
everyone.